Good evening, welcome to the channel. What we have here is white lightning all tilted up on one side. What's going to happen is we're going to be putting some armor underneath the belly of this side by side. Yes, I'm putting on a new skid plate, getting rid of whatever you want to call that thing underneath. What I did was I had these motorcycle stands that I had already built from a long time ago. I got two of them, so I thought I'd put them under each wheel on the right side and tilt it up. I don't want to jack it up this way. I don't have the means for it. Plus, tell you the truth, I'm a little scared to do that because if it fell down on me, I'm done. Just over a skid plate. I don't really have the means to do it. I do have a chain block here and that, but I don't want to fool around with stuff. I don't mind getting on my creeper and crawling underneath and undoing the screws. It may take a little longer, maybe a little bit more of a dirty job, but I'll do it. So there's a closer look at the stands that I have underneath the wheels. I used a floor jack with some blocks to lift it up. I had to take my time with it and figure out what was the best way to do it. It was a little bit sketchy, but it got done. So we'll go take a look underneath and I'm going to show you what's going to be coming off. So that's the skid plate that comes with your Cfmoto. I think most brands don't really supply a good skid plate because of price and everything. They want to keep the price down on the machine going out the door. So what it is really is just a cheap piece of plastic, very thin, doesn't do anything. Basically, it just keeps dust and grass and mud and stuff out from, well, kind of keeps it out from going underneath your machine. It doesn't really protect anything. Back here, you got your transmission and your engine here. Well, you can see where rocks have hit that skid plate and it's kind of bent in. If you hit it hard enough with a rock, bad enough, I mean, that's going to go through your transmission and your rear end and all that sort of thing, your front diff. So I think it's time to put on a skid plate. I've been wanting to do it, but I wanted to get a jump start and putting a skid plate on. I wanted to get it at least jacked up, but now I got a little bit of time. I'm going to take off the old skid plate and I want to take off those cheap, crappy plastic guards they got there under the trailing arm. And get rid of this cheap plastic guard here on the lower control arm, which really is not doing anything. And the skid plate I got is going to come up and around in front of my winch here. Going to go ahead and take all this plastic off. So guys, I'm going to go underneath on my creeper and I'm wearing my chainsaw helmet. It's got a full mask here just in case any dust or mud falls down on my face. It kind of protects me. There's lots of dust falling down. Good thing I got this shield on. I imagine there's lots of crap on top of this dust shield here. I was watching Adrenaline Junkie do this job on his, and he had it up like I did, maybe a little higher, and he only had a half a tank of fuel, and it was leaking out. I got less than a half a tank, and I don't see any leaks right yet, so that's good. There, we have the middle one off. You guys can hear how crappy that is. Like, so for you guys that have never seen a skid plate underneath your machine, that's all it is, just a chunk of plastic. You can see it's so thin, it won't do anything. So if anybody wants a good used skid plate / dust shield for their Zforce 950, I'll sell it to you real cheap. So guys, I'm going to go ahead and finish taking off the other two pieces of the skid plate and the plastic junk that's on the control arms and the trailing arm back there. And hopefully we'll have our new skid plate shortly. So to remove this panel here, there's a couple push tabs here. And then you got 1, 2, 3 bolts under here that you have to undo. Then you got to come up here and undo these 3 fasteners. Just so that you can push back this just enough to get that nut right there. I'll see what's about right there. There's a nut. And hopefully that's it. It looks pretty loose now because I loosened it. I think that's all that's holding it is that one bolt there. So I just wanted to show you that because it's kind of tricky if you've never done it. I've never done it. It's my first time. So there you go. That's the lone bolt that was holding this bottom pan right here. That should just come undone. Unless there's another one up further, I don't know. You know what? There's one more bolt right in there. Right below the gas tank handle. Right in there. You see that shining bolt? Got to get that one too. So right here I pry it up with my screwdriver. And I got a small ratchet with a 10mm socket in there. And loosen it. That's all you can do. So there, that one pan is off. And there's the clips that holds those bolts. Tricky place to put those bolts, but it's doable. You can get it off. Look at that, guys. That's all you have is that little plastic shield protecting your gas tank here. Your floorboards here. You got a bit of framing here, but that's all you have protecting these two. I'm telling you, these skid plates are the way to go to protect your machine if you're riding in rough terrain. Not even if it's not a rough terrain. Even if you have a good sized stick on the ground and you just manage to hit it the right way with your wheel when you're driving at a good speed and it comes up and bangs into here or into your floorboard, yeah, skid plate's way to go. All right, so we got our back skid plate in. That's the first one they say to install under here. So just follow the instructions, use the right bolts, size bolts, like, because these bolts here are just a bit longer than the two back ones there. So I put in the middle ones first to help hold it up. And you'll have to put a small washer inside here, inside the bigger washer. So I did these three first. And then I did these two here. 1, 2. Then I did the back two. And then here, you got to put these little plates in. So you just bolt it up to the plates. Now, I haven't tightened anything up yet. Everything is still somewhat loose in case I have to make any adjustments. I don't want to get ahead of myself. So now we're going to get the longer plate here at the middle plate underneath the Zforce. And we're going to bolt into these plates here. That should be fun. So stay tuned. All right, we got the full black plastic skid plate on from back to front. I'll tell you, I'll give you a little hint right here. So right here, this part here, these two bolts, those two bolts, and those two bolts. I'm laying on my creeper on my back, so it's kind of funny. But they have these plates here. See this plate? So there's a plate that joins these two pieces of plastic, these two skid plates together. So there's a metal plate in behind. There's 1, 2, 3, 4. So in order to get those done up, don't tighten any of these. Like I left these loose. Yeah, all these bolts. But you got to leave them like ultra loose to the point where it's like just barely threaded on, because you need leverage. You need to have this part of your skid plate needs to drop down just a touch so that you can slide that metal plate. There's a bar that goes straight across here this way. You got to be able to put that bar just behind that plate, or put that plate right behind that bar, so that you can line up these two skid plates flush like this, and so that you can thread your bolts in. So the biggest hint here is leave your bolts as loose as you can, and use thread locker on your bolts, every one of them. I think that's everything here. Like all these are ultra loose as well. And the front one here is all loose. It's all done up. And I had to take the fair lead off at the top there. I'll show you. But yeah, you got to take your fair lead off. I ran the bolts in there temporarily so that I could do these up. Now we got to put some brackets, I think here or something like that, so that we can put those big aluminum side plates on. So there, I took the fair lead off. So you have to take this fair lead off to put the front of this skid plate, bash plate, I guess I would call that, in place. But I just put it in there so I can get the bottom all bolted up of this bash plate and tightened up. Then this will be able to, once this is tight, I can take these out and I can measure where I need to drill my holes so that my bumper can go through. I'll have to drill a decent size hole or cut it with a jigsaw, something like that. But yeah, we'll figure it out. And that's where we're at right now. All right, we're at the part where we have the side plate on the Z-Force on the right-hand side, passenger side. There's a bunch of bolts. There's this part here is separate from this part. So this piece here has to be put on. I'll give you a suggestion. There's a bracket that's in behind here. It's probably about the toughest thing to hook up this whole piece here to the side-by-side. So my advice would be when you put this on, tighten it up because it'll pull it into place. For when you go to put this on, some of your holes will match. And I do say some because I got to show you something. And then I put the rest on. Keep everything again super loose so that you can line everything up, and you can line up this thing after. We're going to come back to this. Or actually, I'll tell you now. So once you got all your bolts into this part here, you want to put these in. So I got this one in next, and then I put this one in. So maybe I would have been better off to put this one in than this one. So you're going to have to back off these two bolts here again to loosen that off a little bit so that down here it can match up. But maybe I'm thinking if I would have put this bolt in first and then this one, it would have been easier. So I have to remember that when I do it on the driver's side. Another thing I want to show you, inside behind the skid plate here, the side plate, there's a bracket that bolts up to your bar here, that bar that goes through here. It's going to be loose, right? It's like an L-shaped, and you want to tighten it up so it's facing towards the back. That's the only way you can get one of these screws tightened up and lined up with that bracket that's in behind this skid plate. Okay, I'm here on the driver's side to show you the bracket I'm talking about. So this one here, see how it's kind of shaped like an L? So when you tighten it up, make sure it's pointing that way, not like this or like this. It has to be this way, pointing towards the rear of the machine. And that is how you're going to get that tightened up just right, or lined up just right for the side bracket and the bolt. So there's a better look at it. Again, just leave everything loose. Look how this lines up in here nicely. Good protection. You look down in here and the black skid plate that's underneath comes up here as well. Good protection here. We could use something here though, eventually. I think Super ATV makes a plate that goes across here. If it'll work with this, I might consider it. But yeah, that's how it's looking. Looks really good. Looks really heavy duty. So I still have the other side plate put on the driver's side. And you can see there's all kinds of drainage holes for, you know, to wash dirt out. A couple here, one here. And one other thing I want to mention before we go any further, I forgot to mention, is this front bash plate. It is 3 layers. So you got your plastic here, plastic here. I may have mentioned it, but then there's a piece of aluminum inside. So this is really reinforced. If you hit rocks, I mean, it's just going to bounce off of that material right there. So this will give you 24 millimeters of protection between this, and the aluminum in behind. That's very strong. And in case I didn't mention it, this aluminum is 4 millimeters thick. Very heavy duty aluminum. And the plastic skid plate underneath is 10 millimeters thick. Good morning. We're a couple days later. I've been busy. I've been doing just bits of this job at a time, putting the Iron Baltic skid plate on my Zforce 950 HOEX. Anyways, this is one of the first parts that in the instructions they tell you what to put on, but I saved it till the last. Now, I want to say the instructions for this skid plate are very good. They're right bang on. They tell you exactly where to put stuff. Everything is correct. But I decided to put these on last just because I had my side-by-side up on one side, and you have to remove a wheel to get better access to your strut bolt here. So this is your axle boot skid plate, and it's going to go here and cover this rear axle boot. So they tell you to remove this bolt here that holds the strut in place. They just want you to push this bolt in till it's flush with here so that you can fit the skid plate over here, run the bolt back through and put your nut on. So I'm just going to put a piece of wood here. I don't know how hard it won't be hard. No, it's not hard at all. I just put a piece of wood here so I don't damage my bolt. It's actually very easy to move. Don't worry about the wood. So see what I mean? Just back it out till it's flush here. This is what Iron Baltic suggests that you do. So this plate here that also has drain holes, you want to wash it off. They're very well made with thought into it. So you're going to fit this in place here. So there we have the back in place, and we're going to tap our bolt through the hole, and we have our plate in place perfectly. And there's another bolt under here that we have to install right in here. But here we'll put our nut back on. And right here is where the bottom bolt's going to go in.